ruckus, dude. Welcome to the Provoke and Inspire podcast.
What just happened? That was crazy.
That's it. That was our new intro. You like it? Was that smooth or what? You like it, Chad?
Smooth. It was really spectacular.
I thought that was pretty good. All right.
Brian's
here's the
impressed.
Deal. Welcome to the Provoke and Inspire podcast, calling followers of Jesus to radical faith outside of the church. I'm Ben. We have David. We have Chad. We have Chad. And we have Luke. But the other Chad isn't Chad. It's Brian from Korn. What's happening, dude?
Hiding his identity.
I'm Chad for a day.
Yeah.
Nice, dude.
It's not as easy.
Your
to be
hair is
Chad
looking
for a
great,
day.
bro.
It is.
Thank
Or
you.
I should say my hair is looking great.
It's
Yep.
because
I
I
love
have all this. I have hoods on, I have jackets on, and everything, and it's
I
like
know, it's cold.
What are you driving? Like a Mini? What is that you're driving?
I don't appreciate that at all.
Okay.
Well,
No,
that is
yeah,
about a
I'm-
tense moment.
So this is what happened. I don't plan very well, and I had to get with you guys on the phone, and I went to pick up a rental car, and it was like I got there 10 minutes before us, and they gave me this tiny car, and I didn't have any time to argue with them and get the real size that I reserved.
So where are you right now?
I'm in Nashville, Tennessee, heading to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee.
Nice.
Where are you guys?
I'm in Nashville, Tennessee, heading to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee.
It's
gonna be great.
I'm in Minneapolis, wondering why.
Yeah, aren't we all? Actually, strangely enough, I actually found a picture of the car that Brian is currently in.
Oh, no way.
And that is Brian.
Row pits.
Wearing glasses.
Row pits.
That's strange. He just sent it to me. He took a selfie. He took his
Yeah,
helmet off,
that's
and then he
cool.
sent me this. So,
I'll be the
I love it, dude.
oh no! Look, welcome to the Provoke and Inspire podcast, Brian. Thank you so much for joining us. How? Look, I think this is the way we're going to start. It's been a while. I think we actually talked to you last on the podcast right as the world was falling apart. It was at the beginning of the pandemic when none of us knew what this was. We still don't really know what it is, it seems. But I think it'd be really interesting to just hear how has your 2020 been? What has God been teaching you? What's new in your life? We can kind of start there, and then we got a whole nother topic we want to get into. But we'll start there.
It's been awesome. 2020. I mean, go figure. It starts out with all this uncertainty.
Hey, your audio, we can barely hear you now. You were sounding great. You still look as good as ever, but
Well, I sound better now, don't I?
yeah, you do. What'd
I
you do?
have a
Take it off of Bluetooth?
No, my finger goes over the speakers or the mic sometimes. So, it's been really amazing, because all this uncertainty happened. What are we going to do? And
Yeah.
all these opportunities came to work on music. My heart goes out to the ones that are struggling right now. But as for me, it's worked out pretty well, and I'm very thankful. And just praying for everyone to get through this. And God's just been showing me that He's got it. Just like last time, I told you guys that in 2008 I lost everything. I lost vehicles. I went into bankruptcy, all that stuff. And I feel like this time I was given, just a lot of gifts instead of falling with all the crap that's going on. So I know how to be in a lot of trials and having lack and bankruptcy and all that through hard times like this. And I know, both ways God provides what you need. Last time I didn't end up in jail, I didn't end up on the streets. He provided for me. And this time I'm doing really well. So it's all about trust, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's what He's teaching me even more this year, is just trusting Him in everything. It's like the Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And that's preceded by Paul saying that I've learned to live in lack, and I've learned to live in plenty. Excuse me. So that's what we're doing here. We're learning to trust Him in both of those scenarios.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, Brian, because everything has been kind of the opposite of what I would have expected from this year. We've seen our mission grow. I mean, we're seeing new things happening despite the pandemic, and I mean, it's been a rough time, and but God has really been moving in ways I never would have expected.
That's crazy, man. A truck just almost hit me, so that's
Yeah.
cool.
That's good.
Yeah, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure we just saw that.
Did you see that?
So
Yeah, we did.
He wasn't even.
well, we certainly saw your reaction to
He
it.
didn't
So
even
this-
change.
this-
Like he changed lanes at the last second. It was crazy. A big semi truck. So I almost was with Jesus.
Wow.
Oh man, well that would have been quite the moment to capture on a podcast.
Right.
Yeah, it would.
I will say this is probably the first time we've ever done an interview with someone who's literally driving. So I do hope you keep safe.
Okay, I just
Um,
want to say that this is a sin. This is a sin what I'm doing. So nobody do this at home.
Don't try this at home, kids.
Why is it a sin? Because you don't have your AirPods in?
Well, I'm totally driving safely, but I shouldn't be holding my phone looking at you guys on the screen while driving. That's probably a sin.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, it's like
Gotcha.
clamped, but my phone is the clamp.
Got it.
So
Well, you could, if it helps you could just take us off video, and then you don't have to potentially die in the process. But it's your call, dude. You can
Chad,
sin
leave
all
him
you
alone,
want.
man. I like it.
You're looking
I'm
good
fine.
either way. All right.
So Brian, again, with that caveat aside, and agreed, if you want to take off video, that's fine too. But what tell us more about the specifics of the different doors that God has opened up, like what you're doing, because I mean, I think like almost any artist on any level, this has been a really strange year, really uncertain year. Tell us some more about some of the opportunities that have come up and some of the unexpected doors that you're finding yourself walking through at the moment.
Yeah, like I'm curious how you've actually been spending your time.
Really a lot of I think I told you last time that I got off tour March 1st, and I was on the road for 6 weeks, and
Yep.
they shut everything down like the 10th, around the 10th somewhere. And so I had a place that I hadn't moved everything in. I had one room moved in, brand new place that I got right before the pandemic, and then I couldn't move in because I couldn't unbox because of the tour, the Korn tour that I was on. So it was just perfect timing. So I've been spending the majority of this year upgrading that house, and like there was a basement that was unfinished. I had some friends help me turn it into a movie theater, and it's been really cool like that. But then it's afforded me time to work on music, like my Love and Death project. I was doing that before I rejoined Korn.
Yeah.
And I rejoined Korn, and then did some of that touring with Korn in that band and whatnot, and some other shows. And then I just ran out of time because Korn is such a machine. And so I found time to finish a record we've been working on for 5 years off and on. And it just came out like 3 weeks ago. Sorry, the first single, not the record, but so that's what I'm doing right now. It's really amazing. Korn's been working on some stuff, and we got a lot of exciting things next year planned that we're going to announce in like the first quarter of next year. So, it's just, you take what you get handed in life and you do the best with it. And that's what we've done,
Hey Brian, I saw something you were doing as well, as a post, I guess, that you shared, like wanting to help people out at this time of year with loneliness and that kind of thing. I think it's called Death to Life or something like that. Is that like something that you're directly involved in, or what was that about, helping people out at this time, like a thing they could call into?
Yeah, it's a suicide awareness site and ministry and whatever you want to call it. It's been around. I've known Mario for about 10 years, and he's just like so passionate about helping people that are on the verge of suicide. And so they've helped countless people. So I just like to post every month or two and remind people there's help, and to call or text, if you're having a hard time, and just reach out, and so
Yeah.
I trust them. And there another good one is Heart Support that helps a lot of kids. Jake from what's that band, Chad?
August Burns Red.
Yes, I'm drawing a blank. Thank you.
Yep.
So there's organizations like that are really going after helping kids, and so that's it.
It's cool.
Just
Super
posting a
important.
little comfort. It's easy for someone to just text if you're having suicidal thoughts or something. Just it's like it's like 5 numbers. So
Yeah, it's
right
good.
on.
So important.
So there's a topic that David has been asking for us to talk about for a while, and to be honest, like I don't know why, but I think maybe, well, I think I do know why. I think because of in a way how detached my life has been from this problem. I've kind of hesitated to talk about it, but it's the increasing legalization of marijuana in this country, and kind of the just rampant drug use, whether it's prescribed or illicit. And again, like I said, I think because my life has been, and as Luke pointed out before we started, it's a good thing that my life has been sheltered from it. I don't have strong thoughts on it. That's not to say I shouldn't, because I think it is a topic that is incredibly relevant. And even doing some research for this, it's amazing. You find these videos of pastors and different Christian writers having to kind of very gently discuss this topic, and David was even laughing, like how funny is it now that pastors have to be so delicate in their response to the question, should Christians either themselves partake in recreational drugs, or what should their view be on it? But I think increasingly this is going to become something that matters, and that we as Christians are going to need to have informed opinions on. And as someone who's really obviously seen the dark side of drugs, both personally and in the world that you've been in, what are kind of your thoughts about this subject? Because I feel like you'll be able to bring a personal authority to it that I definitely can't.
well, I just I try to limit it to 1 8-ball a tour, so I don't go overboard on the. I'm just joking.
Just on Saturday or
Sorry.
what day? Monday or Saturday?
Friday and Saturday nights only.
Yeah.
It's like a fast.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So we got to be done with it that weekend.
Yeah.
Hey,
No,
hey, Brian, did you know that reindeer of Siberia are frequently drinking the urine of animals that eat psychedelic mushrooms?
You know what? I've heard that. I went to India, my first missionary trip in India in 2005. I went there, and they would do some crazy thing with the with the elephants' urine, I think, and they
Yeah.
like that's true,
Yeah,
right,
it's
David?
totally true. And that's why I've always questioned why Luke is always carrying his urine around.
Yeah.
Right. Hey, I know stuff you guys don't.
Oh
Wow.
man. Well, David has clearly.
Oh, that got off track quick.
Yeah, that didn't take long. From
Welcome to the
marijuana
podcast,
to
David.
elephant urine.
Mute.
Let's go.
All right. Back to
Okay.
my
Well,
question.
I'm going to say that I'm completely in favor of the legalization of marijuana. So how's that for a counterpart in this conversation? That's not the same thing as me saying that I'm in favor of personally using marijuana, and that as a Christian I do have convictions against it. But I actually have a pretty strong opinion that if we're as a country going to legalize certain things, certain substances, but not others, it just I don't know. I guess it's hard. It's a hard pill for me to swallow. No,
Ta-da.
no drug pun intended.
What about
But
harmful
what do you
drugs?
guys think of what's that?
What do you
What
think,
about
Brian?
harmful drugs?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. Like, right now marijuana is considered a Schedule 1 drug, so that's pretty bad. It's like heroin and cocaine. I'm definitely not saying that I'm in favor of hard drugs being legalized. But
Look here. Let me just.
I'm curious
let me just,
how you guys feel about it.
Let me insert myself here for a second, because see,
Insert yourself.
I don't think it's an invalid conversation from like the the deeper societal impacts or the legal ramifications or the hypocrisy of the law or the effects that the law has on certain people, that's a valid conversation, and I think we could potentially go there. I don't feel qualified to go there. That's not to say that we shouldn't, but I think maybe as a starting conversation that could eventually include additional parts, maybe more looking at the heart of it and looking at the I don't know what drives people to that anyway. Maybe personalizing it would be more helpful. I don't know. We can let this conversation go wherever it wants to go. But Brian, how about you kick us off before David completely derailed us and potentially imploded this entire episode? How about you kind of give your thoughts on this?
I mean, you got to be careful because, I mean, marijuana was that gateway drug for me.
Yeah.
I mean, it was. I know that people have said that, all the anti-drug, whatever. What am I trying to say? You know what I'm saying? So way back in the day, there's been
It's
marijuana's
what got you
the gateway.
started.
It's what got me started, and I just progressed from there. So, to any young people watching this, for me personally, it was very much true.
Yeah.
And so just because they legalize it doesn't mean it's a good idea to start smoking it, because it could be the first step to the ruining of your life. And but as far as nowadays it's different. There's a lot of things different. I do know people that obviously that smoke, and some will just use CBD to help them, and others THC. And there's benefits to both for some people that have medical issues. We all know that cancer patients with the pain, THC helps them. And I mean, I don't pretend to know everything, but I'm just saying that I feel like there's some good use for it. But people that are young, growing up, that are walking with Christ, it's not the best idea to start doing it for fun. Now, if I compare it to alcohol, though, that's another thing. I'm not an expert on this, but if you compare it to alcohol's worse. There's more DUIs, there's more deaths, there's more, you know what I'm saying? And so there's a lot of different opinions in my own mind about it. Me personally, I don't need it. I feel like it will deaden the presence of Christ in your life. Whatever you do, that's going to take away from that, just focus and that door open to Jesus's realm, his kingdom realm, his love and his presence invading your life. And it's like you can have, to me, he's taught me I can have this over here where it's like the world, which is all that stuff, or I can have him, and I choose him.
Yeah, totally. Brian, one of the things I was thinking about when we were coming into this conversation was the health effects as well, because I for 3 years or so I was working with people with different kinds of drug issues, and part of it in Brazil and then part of it in the UK. And for sure there's other drugs that have more extreme cause more extreme health issues and all that kind of thing, but the guys that I'd connect with that were addicted to cannabis or marijuana, as you call it in the US, were often really affected by long-term use, and just how much it affects the brain, how much it kind of slows things down. And so for me, like, those two things are pretty strong, like the gateway thing you talked about, how it opens people up into the other aspects of drug use. But then the health effects really concern me. Like, a lot of the guys are like, paranoia was a big thing. Like they were just thinking people were running after them all the time, and just having these crazy, they'd come into, like, I'd meet with them one-on-one, like on a daily basis. They'd come in to the place where we'd meet and just be telling me crazy stories because they were just paranoid by, affected by all of that. And so seeing that, like, I get worried about how much this would affect people's health if it becomes something that's as widely used as alcohol. Now, I know alcohol, people say it has, in some ways, it has worse effects, but I guess that worries me. What do you think about, like, the health effects that it can have on people, and whether that will cause a lot more issues.
Me?
You.
Yeah.
I
what do you
mean,
think?
honestly, if you think of alcohol again, alcohol's just worse, and I don't know about I don't have really much knowledge about the long-term effects of marijuana. I just know that people usually don't get in car crashes and beat their spouses when they're high. So I don't think it's good for you, especially if you're addicted to it, doing it every day. You're going to have a lot of health problems, just like you said. Some people would argue that it's just not good for you. Doing something that heavy over and over and over again, it's going to affect your personality, and it's going to bring negative effects, like you said, paranoia, depression, and all that stuff. So no, it's horrible, But yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
I think an important part of this, in just trying to relate it to anybody who's listening, from someone who's who's smoking weed, who totally thinks it's a great thing, from the Christian who has no opinion about it, to the one who strongly feels it should be this or something else. I think maybe taking a step back and looking at our culture and the way it medicates everything, and maybe looking at the underlying assumptions or the underlying motivations for any of these things that we turn to, and what is driving us to that place, right? Because you hear a lot of comparative arguments. It's like, okay, is it worse than alcohol, or is it not? Is it compared to other drugs and all that kind of thing? And to me, I think the two things we need to ask ourselves is, where do our standards come from? What are we pointing to as our standards? Not because otherwise you end up in this relativistic, comparative, situational ethics. And the other question is, why go there in the first place? Because it seems like we have a society that, not just marijuana, but it is needing all sorts of chemicals to function all the time, whether it's prescriptive drugs, whether it's even things like caffeine. There's so many things that we're constantly taking and using to medicate ourselves. Don't you think that the first thing we need to ask is, what is the heart behind, or the motivation that's leading people to want to escape, or to want to detach, or to want to experience even new things, as an argument that you often hear? Isn't it the most important question to ask here is, why do we feel like we need these things in the first place? And then we can kind of go from there to trying to get to the real solutions to the problems that are maybe leading to these things.
I just want to say, when my comments from before were obviously for societal purposes, because people are going to do it anyway, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not talking about kingdom people that are focused on and they're living their meaning of life, with Christ. I am in no way talking about, I'm just talking about society. Society is going to go to those things. It's going to go to alcohol. It's going to go to marijuana. It's going to go to drugs. And so there's all kinds of areas and ways we can go about talking about this situation. But yeah, I think people that are just empty, they're missing something in their lives, and we know what it takes to be filled and to not be feeling in lack and empty and like you need something. You need an escape, right? It's like people want to escape. This world is hard, and they go to the drugs and the alcohol, and it's always going to be there while the world is the way it is, And so that's what I'm thinking about, But as far as kingdom people, it's like it's a massive distraction unless you have some medical issue. So I don't want to hog the mic, but I just want to throw that in there.
Yeah.
No, I think that's really true. I also don't understand the argument. Well, alcohol is maybe worse. I mean, they're both bad. So it's like, okay, maybe alcohol is worse, I guess, and how you measure it, but they're both bad. So that doesn't change if it's good or bad. But I want to come at it look at a different point. I looked up the shaman portal, so these guys that are, what a shaman is, everybody? Yes?
I met one once.
Okay. Shaman? It's
shaman.
It's like you're saying it like a Jamaican guy. But
Well,
yes.
Shaman.
Yeah, shaman. Anyway, so I was looking
Was
in
that
the
like a pun, given
was
the
looking at-
content of this conversation?
Shaman.
Shaman.
Okay, can
Cool,
you
right.
guys can you guys indulge me? I want to read something from the shaman portal.
Yeah.
Oh,
All right.
Okay.
Read it.
All right. We need to understand the spiritual, chemical, and energetic relationship of plant drugs. All drugs affect and alter the power and intensity of the energy field around the physical body. These alterations create a doorway to energetic openings to another person's aura, energy, and success. Lower level entries such allow demons and spirits to enter people, and if they're not careful, these doorways can cause a lot of harm. So the shaman portal is saying that one of the impacts of drugs like marijuana is it lowers our resistance to spiritual resistance, and we can actually, there's a spiritual opening that can come. And I've seen that, in friends of mine who've been really hardcore into various drugs. So I think it's not just the physical destruction that it does, but it takes down our defenses against certain things, and it opens up to spiritual powers that can really, like demons and stuff. That's what the shaman portal says. So what do you guys think about that?
Well, fascinating.
I mean-
the shaman portal.
Yeah, I use that website as a resource for daily encouragement and spiritual nourishment. So I'm already there with you. No, I think from my own experience as a once upon a time pothead, that I've seen in my own life how quickly and how easily I would gravitate towards something that at the end of the day is empty and doesn't actually provide me with the level of fullness and fulfillment that I found in the Lord. And so I think that there was a season where it's like I had become a follower of Jesus and I was trying to leave my old life behind, but I was still smoking weed sometimes and going behind the school or going back behind the bushes and stuff, but still trying to be a Jesus guy and still hanging out with a lot of drug users. And it just, there's not a case that I can make where I could say my life totally improved because I had marijuana in it. And again, I think what we're all saying is like, if you have some unique or some serious medical issue and marijuana, CBD, THC, whatever is helping you cope, then that's a completely different side angle than like, man, I'm kind of bored right now. Let's go smoke a bowl
But that again comes down to the motivation
Right.
question, right? That I was saying, which is that everything I read, all the research I did, it does, even from a Christian perspective, say you have to separate the medicinal from the recreational for obvious reasons, right? We use a lot of pretty powerful drugs and chemicals to help in the recovery process, to put someone completely under, to anesthetize someone, to help them recover from severe pain that they would otherwise be experiencing. I'm very grateful then when my wife had to get an emergency C-section that they were able to completely numb her so that they could perform that surgery. I mean, these are powerful chemicals, powerful drugs. Praise the Lord for those. And again, I know people, even in my own life, relatives of my wife's who are, suffering some severe pain because of some surgery and are in constant pain and who, for them, medicinal marijuana has been a life changer in terms of there was no functioning, there was no living in the absence of it compared to what they are doing now. And so again, it's not so black and white as never, because, it's like anything in our life. But I do think it's about why. Why I continue to contest that why is the most important question, because if I'm going there because I'm bored, because I lack fulfillment, because I need escape, because I can't deal with stress or the problems of life, that's just merely masking something that reveals a deeper systemic problem that needs to be dealt with.
I was wondering also, like, with all of that, because like we've talked about the health issues we've talked about being a gateway to other drugs, about like David pointing out the spiritual world behind this, and how once we open ourselves up to certain things, like where does the limit, where does it stop, and all this stuff. So, but the big debate, I guess, that goes on whenever some new change to the law comes in the US, in different states or in other countries where they start considering whether they legalize or they change the way it's legalized, is around whether the law should control that or not. And so I was curious actually to know why, for you, Chad, as somebody who agrees with all the cons that we've like laid out here about the drug, why would you put yourself in that category of like defending the legalization of it? What's your argument on that side?
Well, that's a great question, Luke. And I think to me, it's fairly simple. If we are going to allow alcohol to be a legally controlled, sold, distributed product, but we're going to draw the line on a drug that is, from my perspective, nowhere near as potent in terms of its. And I'm not necessarily arguing that alcohol is great because it's not as bad as marijuana, or the other way around. But I think that there's a level of racial and just personal political challenges that come into play when we're saying it's fine for you to have alcohol, but if you have marijuana, then you're going to jail or you get a fine or whatever. I guess I just don't see that. I like the idea of consistency as much as that's probably not likely.
But then again, to David's point, though, I hear what you're saying, and I'm wary to comment too heavily, because I know what you're alluding to in terms of the disproportionate societal impacts and the incarceration and all that brings related to marijuana use. But just even from a Christian perspective, don't we kind of have to look at these things? Yes, that might play out in certain injustices, but we have to still look at these things individually, right? And not comparatively. Comparatively, it feels like that's kind of how the world looks at morality, which is very much, situationally and comparatively, but there's no sort of one thing that allows us to look at each individual situation and determine, is this good? Is this harmful? Is this destructive? Not relative to the destructiveness of other things, but merely in of itself. And I mean, isn't that kind of what it should come down to, as opposed to it's relatively less bad, so why is it being punished more than something that is worse? I don't know.
I feel like it's kind of a bigger picture question in a way, because it's about, like, especially coming at it from the side of the law, and as Christians, how should we respond to a law coming in? It's like this bigger picture philosophical question of, should we have the freedom to do whatever we want, and how should society work in that way? Like, should the people making the laws control things and say you can't do this and you can do that, or not? And our culture has come to a place where in their worldview they say freedom is the ultimate, so you shouldn't have laws that limit or forbid things. And so that's where I think that's coming from. And as Christians, we would argue against that. Our biblical worldview teaches us that having laws that limit our freedom are good because they're for our own protection. And yet, probably when we go into big debates, maybe we're not as present in the marijuana debate, because there are other laws being passed that for us are even more problematic, but are based on the same ideology of freedom to do whatever you want. So is that the question really here? Should we have the freedom just because
Yeah, but again, I don't know if this is totally related, but it used to be that if you made hardcore pornography, it was a felony, and you could go to prison for it because of the harmful effect it had on society, and there was this idea of protecting children from its harmful effect. And now you look at the kind of destruction that has come from pornography since basically it was just allowed and no one says any, and it's destructive beyond anything we even realize, actually. And so when you then start to legalize more and more harmful things, it becomes the destruction it causes to society is immense. You know, and if we could if you're going to use that kind of logic, we could legalize everything, you know, because right?
Yeah. Where do you stand, Brian, on this, on the law thing? Are you for or against legalization? Because you said what you thought about the use of the drug and everything, but what about the law? Where do you stand on that?
The law, I don't really. I mean, you legalize pot, and I mean, if you don't legalize it, then I think, you know, it's just going to be more crime underneath the law, and there's going to be all kinds of crap going on like that. So, I don't think you should legalize coke or meth or heroin, any of that. But you know, it's like, to me, it's like, it's weed, you know, and I know it's harmful, but I mean, we got to weigh like what's worse, doing like all the underground, you know, drug market for it, or legalizing it. It's just, I don't know. I don't know.
That's the strongest argument I've out of all of them. I think that's the strongest one in terms of legalizing. It's like the criminal activity behind it and all of that stuff. For me, it's not a strong enough argument, but I can see the point of it.
Yeah, but again, and I understand what you're saying, Brian and Luke, but if you would have said back in the day, you know, when I was in university in the 70s, and that today I would see pastors have to explain why people in their congregation shouldn't do recreational marijuana. I mean, so I think what we say, well, we wouldn't do that with coke or heroin or other things. Well, why not? I think that'll probably be the next thing, that we go look at the criminality that there is in coke, in cocaine dealers, you know, and it just keeps on going.
Yeah. It's gonna keep on going, though. That's the thing where I don't get into the argument of it, because we're not gonna be able to stop these things.
Right.
We're never gonna stop it. We just have to go with the flow and preach our message, which is our testimonies. Yeah. Because I don't get into the political side of it, and I don't really like to talk about my beliefs in it a whole lot. I'm doing it with you guys, but it's because we're not going to be able to change where the world's going to go. It's headed. Yeah. God knows where it's going, and all we can do is carry our solution to the broken people. You know.
Yeah, and I think I've essentially hit on that in a different way by saying that while we could sit here and as non-experts debate the medical impact, the societal impact, the political ramifications, we could do that, right? I'm not going to say that I'll do that any better than the next guy, but what I do think I know and hope to know is that the true hope that we have in Jesus, that is what I would like to think I know a little bit about, and that the world is searching for pornography, it's searching for social media, it's searching for endless entertainment, it's searching for recreational drugs, all essentially for the same reason, and that is that as we become more detached from God, as we become more servants of ourselves, that this vast emptiness just grows, and we, you know, you see just the rise of anxiety and depression. I mean, one of the fastest growing prescription drugs in the U.S. is pediatric antidepressants. Wow. That's one of the fastest growing markets in pharmaceuticals.
Wow.
And that is crazy. That is so sad. And so we have a society that as it gets further and further away, as Nancy Pearcey says, once a society accepts a worldview, it tends to work out the consequences. And I think what we're seeing is the increased consequences of a godless world where we have made ourselves God and we can't satisfy the longings of our hearts. And the world is increasingly crazy. And so we're just medicating ourselves. You know, I'm trying to remember where I heard this conversation, but it was some radical social scientist that was talking about, the aging population and what are we going to do with, all these increasingly older people who are alone and isolated and becoming increasingly depressed, and suicide is on the rise. And he proposed we should just sedate them and put them in virtual reality, so that they just live there and they're easy to like store, seriously. And like, that'll be how we'll do it. We'll just drug them. And if they want to come out, they can, but more or less they'll just live in this virtual, as the technology gets better, they'll live in this sort of virtual reality where they're still young and able. And I think that the reason why this matters is that the church and the things it wrestles with are not that far past where society is, right? So 50 years ago, the LGBTQ conversation in the church, you would have thought, we wouldn't have to have a conversation about this in the church. It's so obvious. But now, in any given congregation, anywhere in evangelical West, there's going to be people in that pew who are not sure where they stand on that, 100%. And I think this conversation matters because I think more and more Christians are going to start going, what's the big deal? Marijuana, it's cool. Everyone's kind of doing it. It's legal now. You take that final barrier away, it's legal. So, and I think it's a serious thing that we really do have to wrestle with.
Yeah, challenging. But I think Brian's point before is where I'd land in the end. Like I feel like to use our time in trying to like figure out a law like that, it's difficult. I do agree with you, Ben. We've got to speak into it, but at the end, I think we've got to focus on what is going to be really the solution and what's really going to have power into this, which is to share the truth and the full life we can have in Jesus and how that will lead people away. Like one thing I was thinking about as we were talking is just when we do share Jesus in a context where people are dealing with drug addiction and all of that, that's been one of the clearest places I've ever seen the spiritual reality and the power of Jesus to transform lives. Like we were having a conversation, Brian, a few episodes ago about morality and about whether you have to be a Christian to live a good life and all that kind of stuff. Was one of the the guys on the podcast was talking about that, and it just hit me after the conversation that there is a huge difference between a follower of Jesus and a non-follower of Jesus, not because one's good at being morally good and the other's not, but the power of God to bring change in my life and the power of God to help me do what I naturally would not want to do. And I think in the world of like drug addiction, that becomes even more just evident and strong. Whenever I've seen somebody meet Jesus, like your story, where there's drug addiction and there's just a powerful healing that God brings, and a freedom from something that was that crutch or whatever the person was using that drugs for to get away from, suddenly all of that changes, and that's powerful. And when I used to work in a drug thing in London, it wasn't a Christian thing. It was run by the government, and it was kind of like weird for me because the other people that worked there didn't believe, and they were trying to help people to get out of drugs, and it was like trying to fix a broken engine, that you just doesn't work. They're trying to give them all these practical tips and how to reduce the amount of drugs you're using and how to try to get a more interesting life and go jogging and stuff like that, and I could just see it not working and people just getting like desperate, and I'd be like, I'm thinking I've got to tell them about Jesus and pray for them, and then my boss would tell me, you can't bring your religion into this environment, and then but I'd get one-on-one with them. I'd close the door and I'd start praying for them and see Jesus set them free. I'd get in trouble for that, but it's so different. Like it's when speaking into this whole issue of drugs, there's such a difference when you talk about the spiritual world and what Jesus does in terms of bringing change and freeing people from this whole kind of thing. It's a completely different ball game.
Yeah, and I think that is the beauty of this sorry, did you want to say something, Brian?
Oh, it's all good. I was just going to be agreeing with Luke and just say, the reality is it's here and we have to deal with it. And have you guys heard of the guy from Triple X Church who started a weed business? Marijuana.com or something?
Yeah, Craig Gross, yeah, he has his...
it's pretty crazy, but in his... Go ahead, Brian. I was just going to say he's very passionate about helping people finding the proper strand of marijuana, if that's that's the correct wording, to help them. I mean, he feels like it helped his life, and his family says it helped his life, and he's going for it. So
Yeah.
And, you know, to each their own. I find myself judging that, obviously, but it's just crazy because it's here. It
Yeah.
is here, and so
Yeah.
we just got to deal with
Wait,
it.
Well, he
which
just
is
says his new passion is dedicated to leading a spiritual revolution which incorporates cannabis and spirituality. And so, yeah.
yeah. But again, that just look. I'll do my best not to judge that either. But
Why?
that is
Why do we never judge anything? I think that's crazy.
yeah.
I judge it.
It is crazy. It is crazy. And again, but that's all the more reason why this conversation matters, because I think everything that starts peripheral and bizarre ends up becoming normalized and a real problem for the church to contend with. And so I think that I agree with you guys. What I have not been saying in this whole time is that necessarily the answers are political, although I certainly don't think that we should be apolitical. You know, I think like our conversation with Brian Zond was a great conversation where the example of Daniel is an amazing example. He served in the court of the occupying king, but he was ultimately in allegiance to Jesus, and that was his standard, was God. It was not, he wasn't going to bow down. That was where he got his standards, and when the king asked him to violate those standards, then that's where the line was crossed. So I think we, you know, I would hate to not have had the William Wilberforces of the world who chose to go through the political realm to enact major change. So I think we need that. But I guess more what I'm trying to say is that this is, like you said, Brian, this is here, and this is a real problem. And I think that the world is increasingly, and the Christian world is increasingly going to grapple with this. And I think that we need to be, my passion would be that I would be the kind of person that stands out above the current of increasing medication, that we're the kind of world we live in where we're going to have to more and more live in virtual reality and medicate ourselves to get through, that Jesus calls us to have a peace and a joy and a stability and a strength that doesn't look like the world's. You know, it says in 2 Timothy 1:7, for God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love. And that third part we don't often talk about, and self-control, right? I think that is a critical part of this. He calls us to be sober-minded and self-controlled and have this deep, resilient inner joy and peace that medication can't fake, that you can't replace with food or any of these other things. And I just think we need to be careful to not buy into the relativism of our age and just say, well, yeah, because there's a lot of other things, we can't say that this is wrong, when I do think it is, and I do think it's destructive, and I do think Jesus offers something that is not counterfeit, that doesn't fade, and that doesn't destroy lives. And yes, it's a real problem, and yes, it's here to stay, but Jesus has something better, and it's our job to model that and then to tell people.
Well, Brian, something you said that I really, really resonated with me is I don't want anything that's going to put a dampening on the Holy Spirit in my life, you know? Like I don't want anything that's going to numb me to God being able to speak to me and so to me that's like the biggest reason why I don't want to medicate myself, because I want Jesus. I want his spirit in me, and I don't want to numb myself from him being able to speak to me and to guide me.
Either there's a very big delay, or Brian is just like, that's it, I got nothing left to say.
No, sorry, it cut out. It was cutting out. Yeah, it's like I want Jesus. I fell in love with Jesus. I don't want anything to numb me. It's a complete waste of time to not have Jesus' presence in my life.
Yep.
And I love what you said, Ben. I love what you said, because that's it right there. It's like we model that because that's the truth. You have the way, the truth, and the life inside of you. The Spirit of Jesus, the blood of Jesus covers you. We have the mind of Christ. Anything we do, whether it's alcohol or drugs or any of that stuff, is going to numb that, and you're not going to be connected with the mind of Christ or feel his presence or be led by him clearly. You're just going to cloud it. It's going to make you cloudy. And so that's what we speak about, because that's the truth. And but you know, these things are coming on the earth, and things are getting worse and worse every year, every decade, and we can't stop it. All we can do is just try not to judge people and love them and speak truth.
Yeah. And again, I started this conversation by saying that I have been very fortunate in having been very detached from this subject, but I know for a lot of people listening, and for many of you even on this interview, it's not a cold, isolated thing. It's a deeply personal thing. This is something people in your life are dealing with. I know a lot of people listening. And so, again, Jesus, his heart breaks for those that maybe started off as just a fun thing and found themselves, almost having their lives fall apart, and for others who have really battled with this or other forms of addiction. So this is something that God's heart really breaks for. And I guess to me, it's that I don't want to buy into counterfeit remedy, right? And to me, it's a counterfeit remedy to a deeper worldview problem. And I don't want to waste people's time kind of, saying, oh, okay, that's fine. When there's the real cure for cancer, there's the real hope for them, there's the real truth that will set them free. That doesn't make life easy, and that doesn't mean we're not going to deal with problems and pain. But to me, I don't want to be lulled into thinking that it's okay. And if there's things in my life, sometimes I wonder about things that we just tolerate, whether it's things I watch or caffeine or, the thing, there are, I want to be challenged too, because I want nothing to get in the way of being sober-minded and putting my hope in Jesus, and then using my life to help others do the same. That's what I want to be about. And to me, this feels like something that's just going to numb us, and help us escape and not lead us to the real solution.
We all agree. We can all agree on that 100%, right?
Yep.
Because that's why we're talking. That's why we meet up and do these things. That's why you guys are connect with me on the road, because exactly what you said. We all agree with that.
Yep.
Cool.
That's right.
And I was just thinking as well, it's so true, Brian, you were saying that things are just going to keep getting this way, and this is the world we live in, and we need to recognize that. And sometimes it can feel discouraging, and as a follower of Jesus, sometimes you can feel like, wow, things just like society seems more and more just so it makes us feel like we're just swimming against the stream, against the flow so much, and that is the reality. But then I remember that's always been the reality and the truth about being a follower of Jesus, and that's part of Jesus' mission in this world, right? He was coming in to break down the system and to go against the flow of nature and the system and sin that has taken over this world. So being a follower of Jesus means going against the flow, and it means living out what he's called us to live in an environment that is hostile or dark or different. It's about being light in darkness. So I was reading Romans the other day, and just realizing how relevant it is to now, because this was a small group of Christians in Rome, in such a city with so much deprivation and craziness, and so much was against the way that Jesus had called them to live. And Paul was challenging them to live right. He says, love must be sincere, hate what's evil, cling to what is good, be devoted to one another in love, honor one another above yourselves, never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord, be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. He talks about bless those who persecute you. And it just spoke to me so much, because I was like, those guys had it worse than we did in many ways. They were such a minority in such a depraved city, in so much wrong going on all around them. And Paul was saying, just stand firm. Love people, honor one another, hate what's evil, and stand strong. And that is what it means to follow Jesus, right? So when I see so much going on around us, that's what we've got to stand for today, is exactly what you guys are talking about. So, and that's what it means to follow Jesus. If Christianity ever became mainstream, and it's not anymore, so let's stand strong, and it's not supposed to be mainstream anyway. That wasn't the goal Jesus had in coming here.
Yeah. Amen. Brian, how can we pray for you going into this new year? What's on your mind and heart, and how can we and those of us listening be supporting you in that?
Oh wow, just I don't know, just to be able to break through the clutter and the cloud of confusion, just like we're talking about, just that the message, would come out come forth in power, and that my daughter would be able to focus and get her voice heard. She's developing her own voice, and it's growing. And but she hits roadblocks. She has some depression and stuff like that, and so yeah, just probably mainly for my daughter, and that both her and I would be able to make the impact grow stronger, that the Lord would give us a greater impact with his spirit and his power and his gifting, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, Lord Jesus, we bring that need, that concern. I bring it to you not as just a podcast person finishing up a conversation with a friend, but I bring it to you as a father who has a daughter. And I thank you, God, that you are always the God who relates. You're always the God who empathizes. You're always the God who understands what it means for us to find ourselves in these different places and different seasons. And I just thank you so much for Brian's life, for the dad that he is, and for the gift that he is. And I do pray that our daughters would grow up in finding their voices and finding who they are primarily in you, that their identity would be so wrapped up in you, that whatever's happening in the world around us, whether it's the legalization of marijuana or any other conversation, I just pray, God, that our daughters and ourselves as dads and as sons and brothers would be completely enamored, just enraptured even by how incredible you are, how beautiful you are, how stunning you are, how exciting it is to follow you over anything else. So yeah, have your way. Thank you, Jesus.
Amen.
Yes.
Brian, you rock, man. It's a privilege to talk and to do things together and to find each other, end up some points of the world together and do crazy events, and we got funny stories and good times, and it's a real privilege.
Hey, I just have one thing. Nigel wants me to ask you something, Brian. Is that okay?
I got to think about that. Okay, go, Nigel.
Yeah. So he wants to know why the flip you're not recording any of the music he sent you.
He's got to keep working on his songwriting skills.
Yeah, he does.
They're not very good.
Is that right? So you're basically saying Nigel is crap?
No, Nigel is work in progress.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll let him know then.
Keep trying,
But,
Nigel.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Keep at it, Nigel.
Hey,
Oh, man.
I keep meeting people named Nigel. The guy's named Nigel. I met like two.
Ever
And
since
you can't
this happened?
keep a straight face, right? You're like, oh no, his name's Nigel.
No, I can't. I tell them, I'm like, dude, you don't understand. There's this Nigel thing that haunts me with this group of people. So thank you, Nigel. Love you, Nigel.
Yeah, we love you,
man.
Nigel.
Well, good times. All right, well, Chad, we're going to let you go. The other Chad, you have to stay. And look, if anyone sees this tiny car and this helmeted man driving around, give Brian a high five.
Yeah.
Don't run into him, because that looks like a
That's
rather
not what I
soft
rented.
shell. There he is. Look at him. That is.
It is too.
Come on, man.
I rented something better.
I don't know, dude.
Anyway,
You
hey,
don't have to
I'm
lie to
humble.
the
I
people.
can drive a Hot Wheel. I'm humble.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
see?
That's right. Hey, we love you, Brian, and look forward to seeing you somewhere around the world.
Yes, love you guys. Thank you for having me.
All right,
Yeah,
take it
thanks for
easy.
being
Drive
had.
safe. I'm glad you made it this far. You probably shouldn't go any further. We'll talk to you. Thanks, guys,
All
for
right.
listening.
See you guys.
We'll speak to you next time.
See you, Brian.
Peace.